questions surrounding technical SEO. So throughout the course of this week, we have, of course, covered a number of topics, including the basics of SEO. We've also covered some information regarding mobile and everything related to that. But we've gotten a lot of questions over time related to, what are some of the technical things that we can really look at to improve our site's efforts from a technical perspective. And I think it's really important to look at. So what we boiled down here was, how can we go about getting, kind of taking the scary out of technical SEO, because it can be intimidating for a lot of folks. So just a quick background about NetElixir as we dive into that bit of information. NetElixir was, of course, founded in 2005 with the sole mission of helping digital marketers succeed online. And we are currently at about just shy of 90 fanatically analytical search marketers. All told, we have about 5.5 million hours of hands-on experience, and we apply that experience and boil that down into expertise to really help our clients succeed online. We have our global offices. Our headquarters are right here where we're broadcasting from today in Princeton, New Jersey, and we also have offices in London and Hyderabad, India as well. So we get to see a good amount of the world. So some of the services and different products that we offer. Our services line includes, of course, search engine optimization, which is what SEOWEEK is all about. Social media as well, along with paid search. So everything related to the search results page we're going to help you with, along with social. And we do this through a very strategic eye on developing strong digital marketing strategies to make sure that our clients are successful. And that's, of course, all backed up with our own proprietary technologies that we utilize, including NetElixir 100, which is our proprietary keyword bidding algorithm, and NetElixir SEO, which is its own suite of SEO tools, as well as its own unique algorithm to grade a website. So check any of that out, or you can just shoot us a note with any questions about any of these individually. And a little bit about NetElixir University, who is producing this webinar today. NetElixir University was launched in 2012 with the vision of democratizing the digital marketing industry through exceptional knowledge and expertise sharing. Our goal was to share this information with everybody, with 10,000 businesses worldwide. And if you want to be one of those 10,000 businesses, you can, of course, join us on LinkedIn in the groups. Just do a search for NetElixir University, link up with us there. We have tons of great content always going in there, so feel free to join us there and be a part of that conversation. And why we decided to do SEO Week. Thank you, everybody, if this is your first time attending, and thank you as well to anybody who has attended every day this week, or if this is another time returning for you. So there are currently over 250 million active websites. Finding yours can definitely be a challenge, and SEO is a way of helping you get onto Google and Bing. SEO is, of course, not about fooling Google. It's about doing the right thing. That is a major point that we're going to be covering today. SEO is not trying to figure out the next trick to get ahead of Google and their algorithms. It is about having your website genuinely being better than your competition, and that's precisely a big part of what we're going to be covering today. And, of course, the overall credo and why we want to help businesses do what they do. Essentially, the idea is give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime. We want to help give you the keys to building a better website and having a better experience in search engine optimization altogether to generate that organic traffic. So the remaining 2 days of SEO Week include today, which is Let's Get Technical. I promise this is the last time I'm going to sing. And tomorrow we will be covering, of course, content and social media by popular demand. So definitely have some exciting, fun stuff and lots of great information there. including one reference to chocolate cake. So without giving too much away, that is what we can look forward to for tomorrow. So today we will be, I am joined by Christy Labarca. She is one of our SEO managers here at NetElixir. She comes to the table with 8 years of digital marketing and SEO experience. And if anybody wants to try to look it up, she has also been on an episode of an MTV reality show. I have yet to see it myself, so I cannot take claim for any of the content that is available there. And I, of course, am Sean Swaim. I head up the SEO practice here at NetElixir, and I'm really excited about today because my background is in web development and SEO, so I kind of really get excited about the geeky stuff within SEO, so that's a big passion of mine and what we're looking to share with everybody today as far as how to properly build your website to have a great experience for Google. So some rules for SEO Week. Please make sure that you're asking a lot of questions. We want you to stump us. Any unanswered questions will be published on our blog. We've already gotten dozens of great questions that we look forward to sharing with everybody shortly after the event, probably early next week. All these questions will be up and running on the blog. And we encourage you also to take a lot of screenshots. The actions that you're going to see throughout the presentation today are going to help you improve your business. So again, we encourage everybody to take screenshots and use the actions that you're going to see today, and that will help you improve your business overall. And we encourage everybody as well to hop over to Twitter. Utilize hashtag SEOWeek. If there's room left in your tweet, of course, 10 years of Hannah Montana will also suffice. I'm just kidding, of course. Please use hashtag SEOWeek. And of course, the overall message today is to have fun. Let's make sure that we are, of course, getting things done and improving our website's overall performance, but we want to make sure that we're having fun in the process. And what we're offering today is a technical SEO snapshot. So thank you everybody for your interest in the previous giveaways. We're going to be in touch with some of the next steps required with some of those. But what we're also offering is a technical snapshot and action list. If you are interested in taking us up on this, please just use the subject line technical SEO snapshot and email us. And I apologize, the email address here is actually wrong. It's going to be SEO@NetElixir.com. So once again, utilize SEO@NetElixir.com, and you'll go ahead and be signed up for that technical SEO snapshot. So without any further ado, diving into today's content, let's get technical, taking the scary out of technical SEO. Where I really believe the best place to begin is just kind of setting the groundwork and just knowing that there are over 200 ranking signals that Google uses to determine who gets what position, and a lot of them are pretty technical. You know what I mean? So a lot of the stuff that Google is looking at is designed at making sure that you are having the best user experience possible, and a lot of that boils down to having a great technical experience within your website. So what we tried to do today was essentially boil down and break down what are the technical things that you can utilize within that you can utilize to improve your SEO. And what we did was we boiled it down to this handful of overarching topics, and it's not really and then of course we break down some of the specifics under each of these. So really just kind of boiling it down, like these are the things that we look at from a technical SEO perspective: site architecture, page load time, the crawlability of a page, the accessibility of a page to crawlers and users, and then canonicalization as well, which is its own set of issues. So where we like to begin is the Google information hub. It is your direct line of communication with Google, and that is, of course, Google Search Console. The first action that anybody should take, and being as that today was designed for the technical SEO geeks such as myself and Christy, we make the assumption that you may have already signed up for Google Search Console, but if you haven't already, no worries, just go ahead and sign up. It's absolutely free. Connect it to your Google Analytics and you'll be set. There's a ton of awesome information to be found in there. Crawl errors, just a wealth of knowledge that Google can really share with you, and it's going to really help you identify
backlinks as well.
Yeah, backlinks for sure. Yeah, so lots of great information is identified in that area alone. So once again, great action item to start with is be signed up for Google Search Console. So looking at your website architecture, Christy, we're talking about, what needs to be in your website, and we're over the next couple slides, we're of course going to be talking about getting your website to be Google friendly, from the top down. And really where I like to begin is just starting with awesome code. What do you think, Christy?
I agree. I think that the important thing is, whether or not you're using a CMS like WordPress or if you're having it customly built, you want to make sure that the code is clean, that you minimize white space and whatnot, and that you really just from the foundation don't try to take any shortcuts or anything. You just want to make sure that everything is set because it'll cost more time and money and resources to fix it later on when if you feel that your technical if you feel that your foundation of the architecture is hurting SEO, which many businesses do end up doing.
Absolutely. The kind of the analogy that I always like to use is that you can't build a house on a foundation of pudding. You know what I mean? You need that foundation to be concrete. And
exactly.
For anybody who is a code geek, just a fair warning for any coders with a heart condition about this slide here. So this is kind of just an example of what we're talking about when we're saying good code versus bad code. The code to the left is, there's a lot of
unnecessary.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of unnecessariness going on here. So, Christy, if you wouldn't mind, can you share your thoughts on some of the things that could be eliminated, and some of the proper ways of going about, keeping your code clean?
So yeah, what you generally want to do is a lot of times you'll have code on your page that you're not using, which when added up, it takes up extra time for Google's crawlers to read it. And just by looking at this, you can see there's so many, so many of these codes can be limited into one element, element of code. Like you could use CSS. This actually looks a lot like HTML.
Yeah, it looks like inline CSS and tables. Yeah.
Yeah. So you want to keep the HTML and the CSS organized in JavaScript as well. But whereas on the right, everything has a really nice structure, going from the wrapper elements to the the header and the header holder. It goes in order and it makes sense. And it's easier for Google's spiders to crawl it, and also just for humans who if somebody's updating your code later on, it's a lot easier to read.
Yeah, and I think it's also worth mentioning here, the example to the right here doesn't display this, but what do you think about the I guess it's been quite a while now, but kind of the growth of HTML5 and some of the newer versions of CSS and all of that. What do you think of how that has impacted, just coding in general?
Well, as these codes, CSS and HTML, come out with newer, updated versions, we're finding that browsers and major media companies like Google and Firefox, they're trying to work together to have some type of stable foundational code that works on every browser. Because as you know, some people might notice that sometimes you go to a website on Google Chrome and it's fine, and then you go on Internet Explorer and it looks completely different. So that's another reason why you want to make sure that your foundation is easy to read, easy to adjust if need be. And with the newer coding, there are newer languages to learn, but they're making it easier to display information and to just be more friendly to Google's crawlers, essentially.
Yeah, I think that's that's absolutely a fantastic point. And just making things nice and clean and easy for Google. Looking at an SEO-friendly URL, this is a great way of really getting some SEO juice into your website. Because I mean, when you see a website that has a URL structure like the one that our dear friend Jackie Chan is sharing here, when it's easy to read for the end user, it's also extremely easy for Google to read as well. Some of the query-based things, like where you see a question mark and underscores and all of that, that's not that's really just going to kind of trip Google up. And the last point that I included on this slide here, if you're going to put a space between each word within your URL, you can utilize a hyphen, because essentially Google treats that just like a regular space. Don't use underscores, and especially don't use any other special characters, because they're essentially just going to kind of trip Google up within their process of analyzing your website. Christy, what do you think of directories, putting pages within directories?
Well, I mean, generally you want to keep the content as close to the root domain as possible, because putting it in a directory, which is essentially like a folder, would be, instead of mywebsite.com / SEO friendly, it would be / articles / SEO friendly.
Right.
So but what happens is Google's crawlers have to go an extra step to get to that page, which makes it harder for your pages to be found. We hope that they do. We always hope that they crawl the whole website and every level, but of course you want to make it easier for it to crawl, and more likely that it's going to reach that.
I think that's that
important information.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Now, continuing on with the architectural questions of a website, the use of JavaScript. It's been there's kind of a love-hate relationship, I'd say, between Google and JavaScript. It seems like at times Google can read JavaScript pretty easily. Then there's times where they can't read JavaScript easily. What have been your observations, Christy?
Yeah, so the points that you noted here are I think the most important. You don't want to have important content, or like you said, navigation items with JavaScript. But a lot of the time I found that a lot of plugins or widgets, they're called sometimes, are used, via JavaScript. Facebook widgets and Twitter widgets that many businesses have on their homepage. So they are useful for the user experience, but in regards to from an SEO standpoint, technically they're definitely not something that you want to have important elements of your site content in.
Definitely. And, kind of adding on to your point there, one of the culprits that I've seen fall into this JavaScript trap are navigational elements. You know what I mean? So if your navigation is 100% in JavaScript, you're going to make it very hard for Google to to see where the links to the individual pages of your site are. So best thing to do is to use HTML and CSS, and then if you need like a drop down or something like that, use something like jQuery to make sure that is to make sure that information is loading and that Google is able to get to it. We're going to get to looking at Google's cache momentarily and seeing how you can test this on your website. So stick around for that. So Flash, I referred to this, I think it was yesterday or the day before, referred to this as the ultimate SEO F word. It's just all around going to be damaging to your SEO efforts. And I hope nobody from Adobe is on the line listening in. But essentially, the main problem is that Google cannot read content that exists within Flash. And it's also damaging from a load time perspective as well. It's a heavy file. It's hard for Google to load the entire thing, and then when it does finally load it, it can't read it anyway.
Yeah, a lot of browsers have issues reading it.
Right, exactly, and not to mention just the mobile impact as well. So on the usage of Flash, I guess my main piece of advice is don't. But if you have to, use it for something small that's not critical. Make sure that when you do get that element added, that it is, that when that information is coded finally, make sure it does eventually load quickly. So talking about the usage of frames or iframes, so when it comes to frames, you do want to make sure that you're kind of avoiding them, and especially in areas that you are going to be putting crucial content, because Google will have a hard time getting to that content and loading it. Now, the other side to that is, of course, that YouTube utilizes iframes for loading that content. So instances like that are okay. There's also going to be some plugins and different things like that. So what has your experience been with frames, Christy?
Generally, what you said. I mean, anytime that I see a website that has frames, we do a pretty comprehensive check to make sure that Google is able to access the content that is most important on the website. And I mean, like you said, YouTube uses it, but YouTube is also owned by Google, so more websites have it than you would think. It's just something, if you already have it, to monitor, but if not, it's definitely not recommended to implement.
Definitely agreed. Hidden content, pun intended, with the artwork that we can see on this, or not see on the screen here. Essentially, Flash and frames definitely play into this quite a bit, but just having content that is kind of visible, or whether intentional or not, has definitely it can definitely become an issue. Not just for the fact that the end user can't see it, which doesn't really do anyone any good. There's also the problem of the fact that Google can't see it, and if it's not visible to the user, it's not visible to Google as well. And I think that the other important thing to make note of here, that this also partially applies to content that's within like an accordion fold type of structure. We know that we've seen changes with that, and me personally, I've seen websites that have all their content hidden behind some form of accordion frame, and or not, frame may not be the right word, but it's under like some kind of accordion window, and Google just doesn't recognize it there. Have you seen that as well, Christy?
Yeah, definitely, and it's if you have a trigger to open that frame, Google might not be realizing that it has to go within that trigger to get into the frame. So if you do have that, it's worth taking a look into it and seeing, I think we're going to go over this where you could fetch as Google and see if they're getting to that important content. But in most cases, the visual effect isn't worth the potential negative influence.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. So what we wanted to talk about next was, utilizing Google's cache. So Google does essentially share this information, and essentially how you get to it is within Google, just use the term cache colon and then enter your URL. And essentially what that will allow you to do is see how Google has your website's information stored within their index. Really what you want to see at the end of the day is your content in plain text. And we have a kind of a step-by-step here. We just utilized Best Buy just because, just kind of a big enough brand to pick on a little bit. But essentially using cache colon, you see that Google has, whenever Google had grabbed that information, and then you use the text-only version, and this is exactly what you should be seeing here, is the content, navigational elements, different things like that, all broken down in plain text. So that is essentially what you want to see, because if it wasn't there, or if it was trying to load as an image or something along those lines, that would definitely be a big problem. And then the other thing to keep in mind is when it's loading as plain text, that means Google is interpreting it as plain language. So I think that's the important thing to keep in mind there. So taking a look at how much Google has crawled of your website, if you think of your website, you think of Google as a crawler or as a spider crawling from page to page to page of the web. They want to just grab as much content as possible. And the way of seeing how much content Google has grabbed, you can utilize a colon within Google, very similar to the cache colon function. It is the site colon function, and that will essentially list out all the URLs that have been indexed by Google. And Webmaster Tools or Search Console is also a great way of seeing how many pages are within Google's index. And so there's a couple ways that can definitely be gone through to see how much Google has physically picked up of your website and the number of pages. So Christy, do you care to share a little bit about website load time and the importance of that?
Yes, so we know that load time is one of the most important factors that Google takes into account for, as a ranking signal. So there's many tools that you could use to check your current page load time. There's Page Speed Insights, which is you could access via the Google Search Console, or you could just type it in Google and it'll come up. And GT Metrics as well. It gives an actually really detailed pretty much instructions or what could be done to improve your page load time. And it's again, Google cares about the user experience, so they want, if your website loading quickly is definitely going to help drive traffic to your site, and not only that, it'll also reduce your bounce rate. If a website takes a long time to load, I know me personally, I hit back before I wait more than at most 30 seconds for a site to load.
Right.
And that's actually a stretch.
Yeah, that's you're pretty patient if it's 30 seconds for sure. And as Christy had mentioned, the load time is becoming so much more of a ranking signal anymore that it's just something that you really can't ignore anymore. So in order to make the fawns happy, some of the things that you can go through as a way of improving your website's overall load time. Some of the things that I've seen, just externalizing your CSS and JavaScript so that Google doesn't have so much to go through. That typically is a kind of a quick way of improving your load time. What are some of the other things that you've seen, Christy?
Also, I know we spoke about this a little bit yesterday. The images, we really want to make sure that we either have images compressed, or you could use a CDN, which is a little bit more in depth in regards to that. And I think image compression is probably the easiest way. And then you could also identifying specific sizes for each of the images.
Right, I think that's a great point.
And yeah, I mean, images are usually the most important factor that are slowing down a page load time, because most people don't think about it when they upload images.
Right, absolutely. Then of course there's always this is diving into the weeds a little bit here, but there are ways of kind of helping a browser cache your information a little bit quicker, and kind of maximizing the information that your browser stores, and that will over time help improve your load time as well, especially for returning visitors. So that's just another thing to keep in mind as well. There are some settings that you can put out there that will help that will help browsers store this information, so that in the long run, folks just have a better user experience overall. So next, what we wanted to dive into were sitemaps. This is kind of getting into the basics a little bit. However, it is worth mentioning, just because it is kind of one of the early steps in ensuring a proper website architecture from an SEO perspective. So of course, what we're going to go over the next couple minutes are XML sitemaps, HTML sitemaps. We're going to touch on video sitemaps a little bit, and image sitemaps as well, which will help you with your image optimization. So one of the things to keep in mind with XML sitemaps, especially if you have a large e-commerce website with tens of thousands of products, an XML sitemap can only hold up to 50,000 entries. So if you find yourself getting to the point that you are maxing out what your XML sitemap can handle, it's best to use a sitemap-INDEX file. So that is actually kind of I guess what we could refer to as a sitemap of sitemaps. So it essentially functions as kind of typically best practice would be example.com/sitemap-index.xml. And then instead of a traditional sitemap like what we can see on the screen here, it essentially links to your other sitemaps. So essentially, so example.com/sitemap1.xml, example.com/sitemap2.xml. That will help Google get to where all of your individual pages are. What are some other things that you think could definitely help improve the performance of your sitemap, XML sitemap, Christy?
I mean, I think making sure that you constantly update it when you add new pages to your website. Even though Google will crawl it, or when they crawl your site, they'll see it every day possibly, or every couple of days. You want to make sure anytime you add new websites, I'm sorry, any new pages or a bulk of pages, that you update your sitemap.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you. And we just wanted to, this is kind of covering sitemap-INDEX. And so this is the visual example of what a sitemap-INDEX looks like. So just kind of, again, just a bit of a visual representation of what this looks like.
And the other thing is, of course, you want to, in Search Console, let Google know that your sitemap is there.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. Thank you. So within Search Console, there's an area to submit your XML sitemaps. Definitely suggest utilizing that function as well, so that Google kind of has an extra step of knowing where this information is. The one thing that I just wanted to, as we get ready to move on here, if there are any questions at all, please, of course, just punch them in. I'm seeing a couple of the hands raised functions taking place here, so a little hard to keep track of that. So if you wouldn't mind, just go ahead and punch in any questions that you might have, and as we get to it, we'll definitely make sure that we are answering those questions. So anyways, utilizing the HTML sitemaps, These are great for both the end user and the search engines as well. So for the end user, of course, there is the benefit that they can get to really anywhere within your website that is going to be useful for them. What benefits have you seen, Christy, from the Google perspective?
So yeah, I mean, I've seen many websites that have HTML sitemaps tend to have a little bit of an advantage. Obviously we have over 200, hundreds of other factors, but I really, excuse me, I really think that having an HTML sitemap it helps you as well understand the structure of your website. In this example here, how you could see the different levels of, possibly navigational elements, and then what's within that, and what is within that. It just really helps Google even further. It takes a step further than the XML sitemap as well. And I honestly think users love it. I still look for sitemaps when I go to a website.
Right, absolutely. All right, and then video sitemaps. So video sitemaps are important, especially as we are becoming a more visual society. We want to make sure that we are creating a great user experience for folks to watch videos as well. So what we have found is that if you are hosting your own videos, what you can do is create this video sitemap, and essentially within this sitemap just contain some basic information about the video itself, including title, description, and that's going to help you optimize the individual videos for when Google is crawling through and trying to understand. So we know that just like images, Google can't necessarily see what the image is specifically of. However, they can tell that it is an image. The same thing applies with a video that, we want to see. We would love to show Google that, hey, a video exists here, and essentially just kind of pointing them in the direction of what that video is about specifically. And looking at image sitemaps, image sitemaps have been known to be exceptionally helpful in helping folks appear in the Google Images listings. So the Google image search has definitely become a great thing, just kind of like browsing on Pinterest. We're very visual as a society, and we want to take a look at pictures. It's just more exciting. So if you want that kind of traffic, a great place to start is going to be in getting an image sitemap implemented. So Christy, do you have some points here?
Yeah, I think that having an image and video site, it can only be beneficial really to getting your content found if you have enough of that type of content on your website. And also something to keep in mind, make sure that you optimize the images as well. You want to have alt text and alt text that is descriptive, not just keyword stuffed.
Sure.
And also renaming the images, it's not the most significant factor, but it is important to have a name that is relevant to that specific image rather than just image 01 or something. So that's definitely something to keep in mind.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a great point as well. So getting that traffic from Google Images isn't easy, however, possible for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next item that we were looking to go through, a lot of fun. We had to rehearse the pronunciation of this, but canonicalization, hard to say, important to address. We absolutely have to make sure that canonical versions of our URLs are definitely in place. Make sure that Google is seeing any potential duplicated content as the singular content that it is meant to be. And that will definitely be helping us go a long way as far as making sure that your information is read properly by Google. So getting started with the home page itself, folks that have been in SEO for a while know that there are potentially 4 or more different versions of your home page, and what I'm of course referring to is the www version, the non-www version, and then of course the file name itself for your home page, depending on how your website is coded. It could be index.php. So then you have the www version and the non-www version of that with and without the index.php. So there are just a bunch of different ways of getting to exactly the same file. So the correct way of fixing this and making sure that Google is only seeing one version is to implement some rules using 301 redirects that get all versions of the content of the home page into one location. So just having everything forward so that no matter what you punch in, you're getting to that one location is a surefire way of making sure that Google isn't finding duplicated versions of your homepage. One way of testing this within your own website to make sure that you are not running into this potential issue is to utilize the cache function that we shared earlier. So just go to punch in cache : non-www version of your website. Repeat that with the www version and make sure that Google is only caching one of them. So both of them should load as one. And then the really straightforward way of checking is to just try to go to as many versions as possible, and you should be redirected to the same location each time. So one area, so this is obviously another area where there's going to be duplicated content within your website. One fix for that is by utilizing the rel canonical tag. So the rel canonical tag actually physically gives ownership of a specific page to a specific page. So let's say that you have multiple pages that have the same content, but you really only want one of those pages to get credit. Utilizing the rel canonical tag is definitely a way of getting that credit given to the page where it is needed to be given specifically. I believe we have an example here. So when we're talking about paginated URLs, and I felt a record skipping was an appropriate image to use here. So, Christy, when we're looking at it, because we encounter a lot of e-commerce websites, and this is one of the most common problems within an e-commerce website. Christy, do you mind sharing, some of the things that you've seen when it comes to paginated URLs?
Right. So you want to make sure, especially that when you have different filters that filter out certain products and whatnot, that you're letting Google know that it's a list of products, that there's going to be more on the next page. The code to let them know that this is page 1 of 5 or whatnot, or page next is page 2,
right?
And then on page 2 you have next is page 3 and previous is page 1, just so they know what is going on and can crawl it and know that it's not duplicate content. More importantly, if products fall into different categories.
Absolutely, and what we shared
next,
here.
That's what I meant.
Yep, yeah. What we have shared here is a way of resolving that exact pagination issue that Christy was referring to, using the link rel next and link rel previous, or prev as it's abbreviated, is definitely a surefire way of showcasing to Google that, hey, this is all these pages are tied together. So I highly suggest everyone grab a screenshot of this and just take a look at your website and the paginated pages that you may have, and this will definitely come in handy with clearing up any kind of duplicate content issue that you may be encountering.
And that seems it always seems very scary to people, this concept, but it's really simple. It's just letting Google know what's next and what's previous. It's it's not as complicated as it looks, I think.
And I think that brings up a great point that Google has flat out come out and said, you know, we understand that duplicated content is going to happen,
yep.
especially in the world of e-commerce.
Mm-hmm.
You just essentially have to let us know, you know, when pages are tied together. So if you have, you know, 8 pages of widgets on your website, you know, they're going to be duplicated. So just letting Google know through the use of this tag here
mm-hmm.
is definitely going to be a surefire way of keeping yourself out of the doghouse, so to speak.
Definitely.
So taking a look at Meta Robots, when we're talking about convincing Google where to and where not to crawl, this Meta Robots tag can essentially help you block Google from accessing areas of your website that you don't want them to. So let's just say that you have a page of your website that is just meant for the end users, or maybe it's a PPC specific landing page, or a page that's in development as well. You definitely don't want Google crawling something like that. So you can utilize this tag that is on the screen right here. And what that's essentially going to say, it's going to stop Google in its tracks. It's going to stop Google from indexing the content, and it's essentially going to stop Google from following any links that exist on that page, and it's going to stop Google from going to any other page once they get to this one. So it's definitely incredibly useful for keeping Google out of areas that you essentially don't want them to be in. You can also use this in admin areas. Long story short, before I ramble and take up the rest of our time, you know, what you basically want to do is just think of areas that you don't want Google to crawl, that you know that Google crawling those areas is going to have absolutely no benefit to them. Just consider using a tag as simple as this one, and that will block them. But of course, be careful that you don't apply this to all areas of your website. Okay, so the href lang tag, and I know we're kind of scattering it here at the moment, but we felt that these were important elements to utilize within your website. So the href lang tag is short for the language specific tag. So let's just say that you have your website and you have your US operations, so everything that's in English. Let's just say you also want to utilize an area of your website for Spanish-speaking parts of the country. So what you can do is have, let's say, spanish.widgetemporium.com, and then just widgetemporium.com covers the English content. So what you would essentially do is, especially if you're going to have very similar content, albeit translated from the in the Spanish version, separate from the English version, what you would want to incorporate is this href lang tag. And what that's essentially going to do is it's going to tell Google that, hey, we know that this content is very similar to the English version, but this is translated for the Spanish audience. So it is very important to keep in mind that even though your content is translated from one side to the other, it's not necessarily, that doesn't mean that it's different. Mm-hmm. It is still duplicated content, even if it's in a different language. So you can utilize this tag to make sure that you are putting that wall up between those two chunks of content. So that brings us about to the end of the main portion of our presentation today. And really, at the end of the day, it wasn't so bad, was it? So what we wanted to do now was we wanted to open it up for any questions. We've seen several come across that are looking very solid. So please keep others coming, and we'll try to get to as many as we possibly can. So this question looks kind of specific, but we'll see if we can get to it without looking at the website specifically. So we build our header nav links and footer links with JavaScript since they exist the same on every single page. This allows us to update them in one place. Okay, so So what this is referring to is, and that makes a lot of sense as to why you would want to do that. So essentially, you want it to happen where if you make the modification in one place, it carries through everywhere else. You can utilize something like a dynamic page, essentially. So utilizing something like WordPress or Magento, where you have PHP controlling the elements within your website. So you can essentially utilize something like that to make sure that everything is remaining the same across your website, and that will kind of give you still the same effect where Google can get to the individual pages while also getting it to be that there are everything's still editable across the field. And I apologize if that was kind of a I apologize if that can't if that didn't come across too clearly. I was trying to kind of boil down a bunch of different thoughts into one. So I hope that that made sense. So the next question, can Google read and index content within an iframe? Functions essentially exactly the same as a frame, so technically no, Google cannot. Google cannot read the content within an iframe, so if you are going to load content, you can make it be something that you don't necessarily want Google to read, so that'll be so that's just something to definitely keep in mind. Next question, do you foresee Google bots being able to read unstructured data in the future? I think it's really interesting. I think if Google is going to, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this too, Christy, but just kind of thinking about it, I think we would be a really long way out before Google would be able to get to that point, because essentially every web developer on earth is going to have to move towards using 100% structured data all the time. And
they're trying to, and that's part of their initiative to build a faster web, and working with Mozilla and all the other major technology companies, is that they're creating out of the basic coding, the initial HTML, CSS, they're creating newer languages to help all coding and data be more structured. So I think that most of their efforts are going to go in that direction, and I don't, rather than being able to read stuff that doesn't.
Right. I think that makes a lot of sense. Okay, and just looking at the time real quick, we're going to try and get to one or two more questions, but and also if someone wouldn't mind, if you can hear us, just go. I didn't see everyone. I have one person saying that they can't hear us. I just want to make sure that that it might just be an anomaly with this one viewer. But if you can hear us, just punch into the question field as well. Just let us know. Okay, thank you. Same person said that we're good, so thank you very much. So if you have a WordPress or Tumblr site, how can you make sure that your site gets credit for the content? So you've mentioned a good point here with the question as well, that it's all under one domain, all under your domain rather. So that is definitely going to be the crucial first step, is making sure that everything is under your domain name. That is definitely going to be how you're going to make sure that you are getting credit for it. The other thing that you can also do is you can still utilize the rel canonical tags, and where that's going to come in handy is that if a scraper gets a hold of your content, essentially you're still given credit for your content. So keeping
Especially
it under
Tumblr.
So, yeah, definitely. So utilizing your domain name is going to be step one, and then just kind of having that rel canonical tag as an added layer of support is definitely going to be crucial as well. Okay, and time for one more question here. Does hidden content include web or mobile specific content? For example, display X if desktop, display Y if mobile. I would be careful with an approach like this, and Christy, if you want to, really reflect on this as well. But to me, that kind of sounds like that'd be a territory that I would want to be really careful treading in.
It also depends if you're saying that you have different ways the content is displayed for mobile or desktop, sort of like the dynamic dynamic servers. But if you're showing actual content that's hidden as opposed to for a specific reason, like some sneaky reason, in regards to Google, then I think it would be an issue. But if it's just for not showing an element for regards of user experience, I think that you let Google know that in the code.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point as well. So that about brings us to the end of our time for today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. If there's one golden rule that I can share with everybody for SEO, it is common sense. Just think about how a robot wants to read content, because that's essentially what we're dealing with at the end of the day. Just think about the way that a robot is going to want to read your content and react accordingly, essentially. So tomorrow is, of course, the final day. I just realized the date's wrong. I apologize. But tomorrow, the 25th, it is not Groundhog Day. Tomorrow, the 25th, is our final day, and backed by popular demand is, of course, Content and Social Day. We really look forward to sharing all of that information with you. Please feel free to share this with anybody that may be in the content and social world. We have a lot of really fun stuff that we're going to be covering. So please feel free to join us there. And I really think that everyone's going to be able to pull a lot out of this. So we look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. And of course, as always, thank you for joining us today. The recording of today's presentation will be available shortly within the next couple hours. So stay tuned for that. And we will, of course, be sharing that information with everybody. And next week, we will also have a recap of all the questions and everything. And it's important to note as well that yesterday's recording is now up and running with the show notes as well. So keep an eye out for that, and we look forward to seeing everybody again tomorrow. Thank you for joining us once again. We are eternally grateful for everybody taking an hour out of their day to join us to learn about SEO. So we will see you again tomorrow for the final day of SEO Week. Until then, have a great and safe Thursday.